Justice is what love looks like in public, but tenderness is what love feels like in private. And when you listen to the words, oh, that little precious young one, just laugh it out. Yes. We listen to the words of Jordan Davis's parents, concerned about truth and justice, but committed also to what I'd call a militant tenderness. You can't be a long-distance runner for justice without having a militant tenderness. The great Reinhold Niebuhr used to remind us, any justice, as only justice, soon degenerates into something less than justice. Justice is rescued by something deeper than justice, namely love. The two are inseparable, but they're not identical. And the best of black history is what the Isley brothers call a caravan of love, what John Coltrane calls the love supreme. Oh, yes. But what does it mean to love if you're part of an unloved people? That's what you saw yesterday with Jordan Davis's parents. You know the hell that they going through. The long history of innocent lives being crushed by other folk, and yet still mustering the courage to stay in contact with the very humanity of the folk who have murdered your child. Yes, like Emmett Till's mother, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. That's what she said when she sat there and looked at her precious baby in Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ on the west side of Chicago in August of 1955. That's what Martin Luther King told the precious parents of those 4 precious babies who were killed by cowardly American terrorists in Birmingham in September of 1963. Ooh, what a great history it is. We black folk have no monopoly on it, but it's always important to lift it up, and not just during the shortest month of the year, of February. Oh, no. No, we lift it up every day. Brother George, it's so good to see you, distinguished scholar, sitting next to the president. Militant tenderness. What is it about our market culture that reduces tenderness to manipulation?
Imagine a voice, not just a voice, but a force that cuts through the noise of our increasingly chaotic world, a voice that echoes with the ancient cadence of prophets, yet speaks with the urgent relevance of our present moment. That voice belongs to Cornel West. He isn't merely a professor, an intellectual, or a writer. He is a moral compass, a truth-teller, a modern-day oracle in a society desperately searching for direction. In the video Cornel West on economic justice, we are not presented with a dry academic lecture. Instead, we are invited to witness a profound excavation. West, with his characteristic fervor and eloquence, delves into the very core of our human condition, exposing the raw nerve of our societal struggles. He dissects the insidious influence of market dominance, the relentless pursuit of profit that has become the defining characteristic of our age. This isn't a detached analysis, it's a passionate plea. It's a call to arms for our collective conscience, a summons to reclaim our moral agency in a world where values are too often compromised and integrity is a rare commodity. He compels us to confront the erosion of our humanity, the insidious ways in which market forces have infiltrated our lives, shaping our desires, dictating our choices, and ultimately, diminishing our capacity for empathy and compassion. The setting itself speaks volumes. The video opens with a warm, intimate atmosphere, a gathering of minds at Union Theological Seminary. The introduction of Serene Jones, the seminary's president, is not a mere formality. It's a testament to the power of intellectual kinship, a recognition of the collaborative spirit that fuels the pursuit of justice. Jones, a close friend and influential figure in West's intellectual journey, sets the stage for a dialogue that transcends academic boundaries, reaching into the heart of our shared humanity. This is not a lecture delivered from an ivory tower. It's a conversation among equals, a gathering of individuals united by a shared desire to understand and transform the world around them. The atmosphere is charged with a sense of urgency, a recognition that the issues at hand are not abstract concepts, but lived realities that impact the lives of millions. West's presence is magnetic. His words are not merely spoken. They are delivered with the passion of a preacher, the conviction of a prophet. He embodies the very essence of his message, radiating a sense of moral authority that commands attention and inspires action. He is not afraid to confront uncomfortable truths, to challenge deeply held beliefs, and to call out the injustices that plague our society. This is not a passive viewing experience. It's an invitation to engage, to reflect, and to act. It's a call to join Cornel West in the struggle for economic justice, to reclaim our moral agency, and to build a world where compassion and justice prevail. We are not merely observers. We are participants in a transformative journey, a journey that demands our courage, our commitment, and our unwavering belief in the power of human potential. And so, we begin. This is not just a video, it's a summons to awaken from our slumber of complacency, to confront the realities of our world, and to embrace the transformative power of love and justice. Cornel West, in this profound discourse, invites us to join him on a journey of intellectual and spiritual awakening, a journey that demands our full attention, our unwavering commitment, and our unwavering belief in the possibility of a better world. Let us listen, let us learn, and let us act.
And the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to tell us over and over again, indifference to evil is more evil than evil itself. Becomes a way of life, of mode of being in the world. Well, our conscience becomes coarsened and our hearts are hardened and our souls become chilly. And lo and behold, we began to think that the dominant way of being in the world is that hedonistic, narcissistic, egoistic mode that we see promoted by corporate media with its bottom line of money, money, money. Wu-Tang Clan reminds us, cream. Cash rules everything around us, but that doesn't have to rule us. So I want to begin by invoking an epigraph from the greatest black intellectual, and in many ways the greatest public intellectual of the 20th century. His name was W.E.B. Du Bois. He was 89 years old, had just been in handcuffs in the U.S. court, viewed as a foreign agent. And he said, I've got to tell the world about my life, and he embarked on a trilogy. Isn't that a beautiful thing, 89 years old, when you start a trilogy? That's called Still Being on Fire, a long-distance runner for justice. When you turn to page 275 of that first volume of The Ordeal of Mansard Du Bois, what do you have to say? He said, 4 questions I've been wrestling with all of my life, and I have yet to provide an adequate answer. And these questions sit at the center not just of black history, not just of American history, but of human history. The first question is, how does integrity face oppression? How does integrity face oppression? And the second is, what does honesty do in the face of deception? What does honesty do in the face of deception? And the third is, what does decency do in the face of insult? What does decency do in the face of insult? And the last query, how does virtue meet brute force? And the best of my own tradition, because I always acknowledge every time I get the chance to stand up, because at my age, every day is a gift and every breath is a breakthrough. But anytime I get a chance to stand up and straighten up my back, I let the world know I am who I am because somebody loved me. Somebody cared for me. Somebody attended to me. Somebody targeted me. And so those 4 fundamental themes of integrity, not cupidity, of honesty, not mendacity, of decency, not indifference, and of virtue, not venality, serve as the very regulative ideals to which one attempts to aspire in the short move from womb to tomb. This is true for each and every one of us. And I think, for example, of the parents of our dear brother Jordan Davis. Just like the parents of Trayvon Martin. Just like the blessed mother and father of Emmett Till. What is it about these particular terrorized, traumatized, and stigmatized chocolate peoples? so hated and despised and devalued and degraded, and yet keep dishing out those involved in the quest for integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. Ooh, what did the parents have to say yesterday? I didn't hear it, but the driver told me this morning. It lifted my soul. The same tradition of being concerned about truth, and the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. The same commitment to love. Brother Martin used to remind us, oh, we love Brother Martin, Brother John, one of the best friends of Martin King right here. Vanilla brother. In love with Chocolate Martin, and Chocolate Martin in love with Vanilla John. Justice is what love looks like in public, but tenderness is what love feels like in private. And when you listen to the words, oh, that little precious young one, just laugh it out. Yes. We listen to the words of Jordan Davis's parents, concerned about truth and justice, but committed also to what I'd call a militant tenderness. You can't be a long-distance runner for justice without having a militant tenderness. The great Reinhold Niebuhr used to remind us, any justice, as only justice, soon degenerates into something less than justice. Justice is rescued by something deeper than justice, namely love. The two are inseparable, but they're not identical. And the best of black history is what the Isley brothers call a caravan of love. What John Coltrane calls the love supreme. Oh, yes. But what does it mean to love if you're part of an unloved people? That's what you saw yesterday with Jordan Davis's parents. You know the hell that they going through. The long history of innocent lives being crushed by other folk, and yet still mustering the courage to stay in contact with the very humanity of the folk who have murdered your child. Yes, like Emmett Till's mother, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. That's what she said when she sat there and looked at her precious baby in Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ on the west side of Chicago in August of 1955. That's what Martin Luther King told the precious parents of those 4 precious babies who were killed by cowardly American terrorists in Birmingham in September of 1963. Ooh, what a great history it is. We black folk have no monopoly on it, but it's always important to lift it up, and not just during the shortest month of the year, of February. Oh, no. No, we lift it up every day. Brother George, it's so good to see you, distinguished scholar, sitting next to the president. Militant tenderness. What is it about our market culture that reduces tenderness to manipulation? There's a song by the great Otis Redding called Try a Little Tenderness. I tell my young folk all the time, it's not say my name, say my name, say my name. It's try a little tenderness. That's the raw stuff of the quest for integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. Or if anyone can say that when we're in our coffin, they try to exemplify integrity and be a decent human being, an honest person, and exemplify some kind of virtue. And of course, the enabling virtue is always what? Courage. And our market society is always obsessed not with courage, but with what? Smartness and dollars. Oh, that's what our young people are exposed to every moment of their lives. The best thing that could ever be said about them is that they're the smartest person in the room. Well, I've never been impressed with just smartness. I want wisdom. I want compassion. I want courage. I want maturity. I want a willingness to serve and finding a joy in serving others. That constitutes a counterculture against fleeting pleasures and instant gratification. It's no accident that our music these days lacks tenderness. It's body stimulation, not soul stirring. First time in 50 years that a black artist did not have a pop #1 hit on the Billboard. What's going on? Recording industry, video industry, radio industry, all owned by the same oligarchs and plutocrats. So who gets the record deals? How come we don't have the Curtis Mayfields and the early Bob Dylans? And the Nina Simones and the James Clevelands. I'm not talking about praise songs. I'm talking about spirituals and gospel songs where you lift your voice to touch a life, not make a noise to entertain in a superficial way. Militant tenderness, inseparable from a subversive sweetness. Yes, that's what we heard in the words of Jordan Davis's parents. You can hear in the backdrop the voice of David Ruffin of the Temptations, shot through with a tenderness and a sweetness from Why Not Mississippi, Jim Crow gut bucket Mississippi. But here comes David Ruffin with that voice. Is not just entertainment. I've always understood myself as a Christian blues man in the life of the mind and a Christian jazz man in the world of ideas, because I want to be true to the voice of the David Ruffins and the Aretha Franklins and the horns blown by Coltrane and the piano played by Mary Lou Williams. These are spiritual giants and love warriors trying to touch the hearts, minds, and souls and bodies of a people who have been taught to hate themselves, who walk around with their back humped over. And Brother Martin used to say, what, anytime you straighten your back up, you're going somewhere, because folk can't ride your back unless it's bent. Straighten it up. Like Sly Stone, stand. There's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you going anywhere. But that militant tenderness and that subversive sweetness would allow you to say, as Brother Martin did after 4.5 hours in the dark, as he was taken in the paddy wagon from Atlanta all the way down to Tattlehouse, Georgia, in the Reedsville prison, greeted with his father and Andy Young, and looked like he'd had a nervous breakdown. And what did he say to the brothers when he saw them? This is the cross we must bear for the freedom of our people. And we'll never allow anybody to push us in the gutter in such a way that we will hate them even as we hate their deeds. That's spiritual maturity, rooted in a militant tenderness, rooted in a subversive sweetness, and rounded out with a radical gentleness. These are subversive virtues. Radical gentleness, being able to touch literally, metaphorically, with your sound, with your arguments, with your vision. Most significantly, Shakespeare puts it in his swan song, The Tempest, don't worry about my words. I want you to be a master of the art of living. Don't get caught up with my art in terms of my sophisticated, nuanced language. I want you to master the art of living. With your life, do you touch folk so that your very way of being in the world becomes a blessing. Rather than in too many of our mega churches, we pray for a blessing, that next Lexus. No. Your life is to be a blessing, an offering. And so, yes, martyrdom can very well become a kind of witness, but you're already engaged in witness bearing. And therefore, in the end, yes, maybe you will give your life, but that becomes a joy. That itself becomes a privilege because the life was given to you by God anyway. It's not yours. Death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory anyway? If you're really grounded in that radical love and freedom and radical freedom and love that the early Karl Barth talked about. It makes you a nonconformist in the world, but not of it. So you can stand and look at the powers that be and say, I can't stand the Wall Street government. I can't stand the drone government. I can't stand the national security, national surveillance government. I can say it without hating the folk who are doing it, but I don't like empires that subjugate other people. I don't like capitalist regimes that have asymmetric relations at the workplace where working people are being treated as if they're just marginal utilities rather than children of God. Oh, yes. I can't stand the treatment of indigenous people. Acting as if indigenous peoples, because they're not in the room, we ought not to be concerned about their suffering. Just in El Paso this weekend with the moving borders of our brown, Latino, Chicano brothers and sisters. I teach a course at Rawway. We were 5 hours on Valentine's Day where we had a love fest. Taught in prisons for 37 years. We set up the Sing Sing program, 1977, Union Seminary, George Weber, MA program. And now 36 years later, I get a chance to teach Plato's Apology and Augustine's Confessions, and we read Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. The brothers got a lot of time. They got a lot of time, so they're wrestling. We read Lorraine Hansberry's The Raisin in the Sun. To do what? To let them know that within any context in God's world, it's still in the end about your quest for integrity, decency, honesty, and virtue, and it can be enacted anywhere. You might be incarcerated, but your spirit doesn't have to be imprisoned. Just like there's a whole lot of folk walking the streets whose minds are locked in the forms of mental, psychological bondage, and think they're free and just seduced by the corporate media trying to convince them to be market-driven entities rather than living creatures made in the image of a mighty God. That to me is what black history at its best is all about. And you say it with a spirit of confidence, but not a spirit of self-righteousness. We have the challenge at the union. So many of our students on fire, and we love that. And that's a beautiful thing in a nice age. Where it's fashionable to be callous toward other folk. But even when you're on fire, here at All Souls and other places, it's not in a spirit of self-righteousness. It's a spirit because you have a chance, an opportunity to be of service to others with your fallible, finite self on the way to being the culinary delight of terrestrial worms. Oh, how sweet it is to be human and to be wedded and tied to what that gentle genius Curtis Mayfield called the love train. People, get ready. Are you ready to get on it? And that's why I like to come through All Souls, because you got a lot of love conductors on the love train. Beautiful thing. Let me stop right now. We open up a question and answer. Thank you all so very much. God bless you. God bless you. We have a good time. We got a good time for question and answer. Yeah, I got a good time. God bless. God bless. God bless.
Please raise your hands. We got the microphones coming. There's the first one, please. Okay, Brother West,
Yes.
I am, as a father and a granduncle, I am shocked and deeply saddened by the loss of Trayvon Martin and this latest one in here. But I am also deeply saddened and horrified at the loss of children and teenagers through drone warfare. I'd like your comment on the latter.
No, absolutely. In fact, I think it goes hand in hand. You see, for me, the loss of any child of any color, any culture and civilization is not just wrong, immoral, and unjust, but in many ways it's a crime against humanity. And therefore I try to have the same holy anger and righteous indignation and moral outrage at precious babies in Somalia, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, and Pakistan, when drones are dropped in the name of the U.S. government, and then hidden, thanks God, Brother Edward Snowden, who tries to pull the cover to give us some sense of what our government is doing. And anytime any government is involved in lies that conceal crimes, we ought to be upset, deeply upset. I got in trouble, as you know, when I called my dear brother President the Global George Zimmerman. Because George Zimmerman says out of self-defense he killed an innocent person. Well, the U.S. government says out of self-defense, so far we've killed 226 innocent children. I'm not convinced with either argument that it's self-defense. It's wrong and it needs to be called out. And that killer list that they examine every Tuesday. And Sister Hillary was in there too. I know people getting excited about her running for president and things, and we need to tell the truth. Now she's in there too. Biden's in there too. A war crime is a war crime is a war crime. Bush had 45 drones. We marched. We went to jail against Bush for his war crime. So far there's been over 400 drones. Where is the moral consistency of what the great Jane Austen called constancy? Because we're concerned about everybody. Same is true. A Jewish baby in Tel Aviv killed by a bomb is wrong, it's unjust. Precious Palestinian baby, just like the precious Jewish baby in the West Bank, killed by state terrorism. It's wrong. Oh, that's anti-Semitic. No, that's anti-injustice. Love my Jewish brothers and sisters. Love my Palestinian brothers and sisters. All of them equal in the eyes of the God that I serve. That's not the God that Bill Maher rejects. Y'all know that. I've been trying to convince my brother about that. What I love about atheism is it just clears the deck. Whereas as a revolutionary Christian, a prophetic Christian, it clears all the decks other than the God of love and justice. So let the idols go. Yes, I'm with the atheistic brothers and sisters. Let the idols go. If the only God was the God of the Ku Klux Klan, I'm an atheist too. But I have a conception of God that many of the atheists don't fully grasp. Just hang around some of those love warriors for a while, and you get the idea of how that story and that narrative that our dear sister was talking about helps you continually unleash the love in such a dark world with cycles of domination and exploitation. How do we put the brake on it? How do we try to break that cycle, at least for a moment?
Question, please.
Brother Cornell,
Yes,
good to see you in
my dear sister.
Pasadena.
How you
I
doing?
saw you in Dayton, Ohio. I wish we had
In Dayton, Ohio.
that time, yeah. You and James Forbes and Wyatt Walker called you. Yeah.
It's United Theological Seminary?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
my God. Samuel Proctor Fellows.
Yes,
those,
yes.
Those were the days.
Anyways, those were the great days, and I appreciate your analysis of the state as it is. Can I nudge you to do some prophetic imagination in terms of bringing economic justice in this unjust world we live in? What are you imagining? What's your trajectory?
Well, I appreciate the question. No, you know, I've been wrestling with Brother Martin. He's on my mind. I just finished a book called The Radical King, rereading The World House, that last section of Where Do We Go From Here, his magnificent address that he gave honoring W.B. Du Bois in February of 1968, his magnificent reflection on the bravest man I ever met, Norman Thomas. When we received that prize, he said, Norman Thomas needs to receive this prize. American socialist, democratic, socialist, anti-war, struggling against Jewish hatred. One of the few that signed the letter to Roosevelt against the internment of our precious Japanese brothers and sisters. So Martin's on my mind, and therefore, in a certain sense, his prophetic imagination. How can we conceive of a beloved community and allow it to intervene in space and time in such a way that we put poor and working people, those Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth, at the very center of our view of the world? And it means, of course, it pits you over against powers that be, given the warped priorities that we have. So when talking about economic justice, it's a matter of trying to get some accountability for the greed that's run amok among our oligarchs and plutocrats who are in the driver's seat right now. Look at the TPP, look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, reshaping the whole world in the image and interest of corporate elites, fast-tracked, trying to right now be fast-tracked through Congress, no serious public deliberation about it. I mean, it's fascinating because here you see Brother Barack Obama and the Koch brothers overlapping because it's tied to the Keystone. The Koch brothers got $100 billion in it. You say, wait a minute, how could that be? The Koch brothers been lying about Barack Obama ever since he thought about or dreamed about running for president. Because the right wing does have a vicious hatred of our dear brother. And we have to keep track of that. But don't allow that hatred to blind you to the alliances that take place in high sights in the empire. You see, we just lost the battle, didn't we, with the workers in Tennessee? Yes. You see, we got to bounce back. You see, we got to defend our teachers' unions, given the profit-driven privatizing of public education, the closing of schools. Some of us almost went to jail in Harlem just last year. So you're not going to close Wadley. Not in Harlem. It's been around for almost 100 and some years. You're going to have to drag my black body in, which they will willingly do, of course. Same is true with Stop and Frisk, right? They had to drag our body, which they did, and took us to jail. And we lost the week-long case. Was convicted, but at least raised the issue. Now we got a mayor who's not talking about ending it, but he wants to amend it. Okay, that's a good step. With de Blasio, we pray for him. We would want to make sure that he's not another neoliberal who talks progressive and then governs in a neoliberal manner. We got to keep pressure on him. Go right ahead, my brother.
Brother West, I'd like to first thank you for your inspiration. You've really been a major inspiration for me. Second, as a young person in today's society, yes, what would you do if you were in my shoes to fight for justice and equality and righteousness?
Wow, I appreciate that question, brother. It's always good to have a new school brother with an old school brother talking to her. Lord, Lord, Lord. Well, one, do I take very seriously the Shakespearean imperative to thine own self be true, and as night follows day, that can be false to no one, which means that only you can answer that question in the deepest sense. I don't know you well enough. I haven't zeroed in on the dark precincts of your own soul. You know what I mean? But I do know that you, like I, can try to be persons of integrity, honesty, decency, and to have a calling, not just a career. The best way of not selling out, the best way of ensuring that you're not thoroughly seduced by the carrots that are oftentimes peddled in our faces is that you have the three fundamental elements of the great Heschel defined as piety, remembrance. You remember those who came before, and especially those who want you to be persons of integrity, beginning with mom, dad, granddad, and then, of course, writers who you encountered, the Chekhovs and the Shakespeares and the Coltrane's and the Lorcas and others. But in addition, remembrance is reverence. You revere something more than just position, wealth, power, status. And that could be echoed in Socrates' speech before the trial. I want everybody to be concerned about the state of their soul, what kind of person you are, as opposed to just your wealth, status, and position in Athens. Socrates, we appreciate that. That's powerful. Remembrance, reverence, but then resistance. You have to have the courage to cut against the grain, you see. And that's very, very difficult, very difficult. Today, to be successful is in many ways to be an imitation, a copy, or to stand out in order to be more conformist. So it's not the real power of difference. It's the manipulation of difference in order to be part of the same. You see? And I tell young folk all the time, you see, when I invoke Donny Hathaway, when I invoke Wanda Hutchison of the Emotions, when I invoke Ted Mills of Blue Magic, when I invoke Donald McPherson of the Main Ingredient, or William Hart of the Delphonics, what is distinctive about them are they originals. As soon as you hear their voice, you know who it is. But these days, too often, we see copies in the popular culture, copies in the academy, copies in the churches and the mosques and the synagogues because they can't wait to be accepted by the mainstream and to be rewarded, but rewarded not with great joy and a sense of calling, or with big money and a sense of professional stature. You see, and wonderful thing about Jesus and Socrates and Muhammad and others is that professional stature is really not the end and aim. It's about the kingdom. It's about beloved community. God bless you. You stay strong, though, brother. Brother Joseph.
Great to have you again, Con. Yeah. Goes back 40 years to our
40 years back in Cambridge.
That's right, with John Rawls.
With John Rawls and the others. Yeah.
But my question comes out of the democratic socialist tradition. Yes. In the eclipse of the Occupy movement, what do you see as signs of a national social movement now that, you know, beyond the sort of trade unions and the poverty bus tours and so on? I mean, the best democratic resource, democratic socialist resource, is always social movements.
Absolutely.
So where do you see signs of hope for new emerging social movements in our time?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, brother. Always a blessing to see it. Occupy is taking a number of different forms. It's still going on in a variety of different contexts, but it doesn't have that high visibility in those sites that were coalescing a variety of different bodies and voices. But I think the spirit of Occupy has been one of the signs of hope in our time. And a lot of people say, well, but it was upper middle class, vanilla folk. No, that's not true. You had upper middle class folk, but I was there on 13 different Occupy sites, and you had a variety of different. We had Occupy the Hood. That was strong in Harlem and Brooklyn and so forth, you see. And you got a number of gay brothers and lesbian sisters and transgendered and bisexual folk of all colors straightening their backs. And this is a moment for our precious gay brothers and lesbian sisters, and we need to be behind that, but we have to remind them it is not simply for them to become now accepted, recognized, and then well-adjusted to other folks' injustice. You see, this is a holistic affair we get behind. I think it ought to be federal statutes to support our gay brothers and lesbian sisters. I don't believe in states' rights when it comes to civil rights of anybody. Anybody. It ought to be federal at the highest level, But it's hard to know because right now we're still so fragmented. We're so fragmented. And most importantly, we're still afraid. We're intimidated. And this is one of the great lessons of black history, right? There'll never be truth-telling and witness-bearing unless you can look the fear in the face and stand up. Marcus Garvey used to have one black man all the time leading the rally. And what did that sign say? The Negro is not afraid. That's very important. And right now we've got a black professional class that in many ways is more afraid and intimidated than black working and poor folk. They just have material toys. Or maybe a spouse, a trophy spouse, or whatever it is that they think they have to protect for their appearance. They say, no, we want to know who you are, what's in your soul. And if you're afraid, just say that. Just say, I think my career is going to be called into question if I tell the truth, so I'm going to trot out some lies. That's the truth. That's truth telling. We understand that. I'd lie for my mama. FBI knows that. Because the only thing greater than truth for me is love. And they mess with my mom and my kids, I'll tell a lie. I won't sell out, but I will lie. And I'll tell the world, I told the lie because my love for mom is deeper than some proposition. But then I go back to my truth telling again. You see what I mean? So the question is, how do we have a spirit? That's, again, where the tenderness, gentleness, and sweetness and the courage come into play. Because there's no such thing as social movements if people are afraid, if they're intimidated, if they're scared. You get failure of nerve and you end up with what? Milquetoast, spineless, thoroughly folk driven by fear. FBI knows it, CIA knows it, your boss knows it, powers that be know it, oligarchs know it, plutocrats know it. And each time you break the cycle of being afraid, that's what the 1960s was about. You see, folk just wasn't afraid anymore. You see, Huey Newton, you're going to get shot by the police. I stand because I love the people. That Negro's lost his mind. No, he's just no longer afraid. Now, that's not the litmus test. We're not talking about just you're a freedom fighter only if you'll take a bullet. No, that's not true. But there are symbolic bullets coming everybody's way who tries to tell the truth and bear witness to justice. Metaphoric bullets coming your way. Struggles with friends, parents, and so forth and so on, you see. I know we got some more
questions. I'm always trying to figure out the nexus of capital and economic justice and how you can leverage the market to create change. I want to know your thoughts on social impact investing, triple bottom line and double bottom line investing, where that fits into your worldview.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I was glad to see my dear brother Bacon was talking about reading Robert Reich. You want to read Black Agenda Report. You want to read Counterpunch. You want to read a variety of the counter voices that accent the counter-hegemonic, countervailing forces against the mainstream obsessed with just oligarchic versions of capitalism, or oligarchic versions of capitalism in which the plutocrats dominate. I see these reformist steps as significant. It's not all or nothing. It's a process, you see. A few years ago when Brother Phil Angelides was running for governor against Arnold Schwarzenegger, how Brother Arnold won remains a mystery. I grew up in California, so I'm not putting Californians down with any New York sense of pretension and arrogance. But Phil Angelides had the double bottom line. We traveled around the country with the double bottom. How do you do good and do well at the same time? Because you have structural constraints. You see. And that, to me, was a very important step. It wasn't revolution. It wasn't fundamental transformation, but at least provided a means by which we can get beyond simply the doing well financially and then it being dependent on philanthropy. You know, philanthropy is a beautiful thing, too. You're giving. The Gates gives big money, and others give big money. But we know, charity is not justice. Philanthropy is not justice. It's not dealing with structural arrangements. But when you have bottom line, that's even a step beyond philanthropy, because it's still built into the system now. That it's not just profit; it's just so litmus test for how you ascribe significance to an institution. You see, and so there's some moral dimension and some spiritual dimension. Triple, you see, even better. Social, what is it? What's the ice cream brothers? Yeah, Ben and Jerry's. They have been in the vanguard in this regard. I applaud them in terms of trying to somehow be socially responsible in their investments. That's very important. Trying to make sure you don't invest in institutions that are thoroughly associated with forms of domination. We got a debate right now on the Israeli occupation, right? That's a serious debate. We need to have that debate. But before we have the debate, you say explicitly, look, we're not putting up with any anti-Jewish hatred. We're not putting up with any anti-Palestinian hatred. We're talking about a structure of domination called occupation. And we want to make sure people come down on that issue in the same way you would if Palestinians were dominating Jews in occupation. Would you have the same conclusion? If Israeli occupation, the Palestinians, both peoples, precious, priceless. Let's have the debate about whatever kind of boycott And we had the same debate in South Africa. We could have the same debate in Tibet, China, Kashmir, India, Sub-Sahara, Morocco, all of those forms of occupation in which a dominant power is subjugating a people, you see. And we certainly could have that debate about our precious indigenous peoples here in the United States.
Give us your final blessing till next year.
Oh, yeah, well, the final blessing is I can't wait, if the Lord allows me to live, to be back next year. Because this, I'll tell you that right now. God bless you.
Cornel West, the walking glory attack. Cornel West, the walking glory attack. Walking glory attack.
West's opening salvo, The Age of the Sellout, strikes at the heart of contemporary society. In a world where financial success is the ultimate measure of worth, authenticity and integrity are often sacrificed on the altar of profit. The relentless pursuit of wealth and power has created a culture where ethical considerations are relegated to the margins, where compromise is the norm, and where moral relativism reigns supreme. He references a sermon about the need for counter-narratives against the market-driven world, where even figures like Bob Dylan can be seduced, highlighting the pervasive influence of big money and its tendency to compromise artistic and intellectual integrity. This age of the sellout is not just a description of individual choices. It's a systemic indictment of a culture that prioritizes profit over people. This market-driven culture fosters a dangerous desensitization to injustice. We become accustomed to the suffering of others, accepting inequality as an inevitable byproduct of progress. The speaker warns against the insidious creep of complacency, urging us to resist the normalization of injustice and to reclaim our moral compass. It's a subtle form of societal anesthesia, where the pain of others becomes background noise, a distant hum that fails to stir our conscience. We begin to justify our inaction with rationalizations, convincing ourselves that we are powerless to effect change, that the system is too entrenched to be challenged. This complacency is not merely a passive state, it's an active choice to ignore the suffering of others, to prioritize our own comfort and security over the well-being of our fellow human beings. This phenomenon is not merely a matter of individual choices, it's a systemic issue. The very fabric of our society is woven with the threads of consumerism and materialism, creating a culture that prioritizes profit over people. The media bombards us with messages that equate happiness with material possessions, that equate success with financial wealth. The result is a society where individuals are reduced to consumers, where human value is measured in dollars and cents. This commodification of human existence has profound consequences, eroding our capacity for empathy and compassion, and leaving us adrift in a sea of alienation and isolation. At the core of West's message lies the revolutionary assertion that justice is rescued by something deeper than justice, love. Drawing upon the wisdom of W.E.B. Du Bois, West emphasizes the importance of integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue, especially in the context of racial injustice. He speaks about militant tenderness and subversive sweetness as essential qualities for those engaged in the long-distance struggle for justice. This is not a passive or sentimental love, but a fierce and unwavering commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. He references the parents of Jordan Davis and their commitment to truth and justice as examples of this militant tenderness in action. This concept is crucial, as it provides the emotional and spiritual fuel necessary to sustain the fight for justice. Even in the face of immense suffering and setbacks, this kind of love is not easily extinguished. It is the fuel that keeps the fires of resistance burning even in the darkest of times. It is the quiet strength that sustains those who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of a more just and equitable world. It's a love that compels us to act, to challenge injustice, and to stand in solidarity with the marginalized and oppressed. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and our responsibility to care for one another, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. It is about building bridges of understanding and empathy, even across seemingly insurmountable divides. It's the conviction that every human life has intrinsic value, and that we are all interconnected, bound together by a shared destiny. This militant tenderness demands courage and resilience. It requires us to confront our own biases and prejudices, to challenge the status quo, and to speak truth to power. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and our responsibility to care for one another, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. It is about building bridges of understanding and empathy, even across seemingly insurmountable divides. It's the conviction that every human life has intrinsic value, and that we are all interconnected, bound together by a shared destiny. It's a love that is both fierce and compassionate, both strong and gentle. A love that is capable of transforming both individuals and societies. West critiques the market culture's reduction of tenderness to mere manipulation, and emphasizes the importance of courage over mere smartness. He laments the lack of tenderness and depth in contemporary music, referencing spiritual giants like David Ruffin, John Coltrane, and Mary Lou Williams, contrasting their artistry with the commodified and often soulless nature of much of today's popular music. This critique extends beyond the realm of art, encompassing the broader societal trend of prioritizing profit and efficiency over human connection and compassion. The market culture, with its emphasis on competition and individual achievement, often undermines the very values that are essential for a just and humane society. This obsession has also corrupted our cultural landscape. The speaker laments the lack of tenderness and depth in contemporary music, a reflection of the control exerted by oligarchs and plutocrats over the recording, video, and radio industries. The commodification of art has stifled creativity and reduced it to a mere product for consumption. The result is a cultural wasteland, devoid of meaning and substance, where entertainment is reduced to a form of escapism, a distraction from the harsh realities of life. This is not just about the quality of art, it's about the erosion of our capacity for meaningful expression, the silencing of voices that challenge the status quo, and the homogenization of culture in the pursuit of profit. The relentless pursuit of individual gain has replaced the traditional emphasis on community and collective well-being. This individualistic ethos fosters a sense of isolation and alienation, undermining our ability to connect with others on a meaningful level. The market culture encourages us to view ourselves and others as competitors, constantly striving to outdo each other in the pursuit of wealth and power. This competitive spirit erodes our capacity for empathy and compassion, leaving us adrift in a sea of self-interest and indifference. West advocates for radical gentleness and the importance of living a life that is a blessing, not one defined by material accumulation or the pursuit of power. He calls for nonconformity in the face of oppressive systems, urging individuals to resist the pressures to conform and to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. This call to nonconformity is not a call to isolation, but rather a call to build communities of resistance, to find strength in solidarity, and to create alternative ways of living that are rooted in love, justice, and compassion. This is a profound shift in perspective, a rejection of the dominant paradigm that equates happiness with material possessions. This isn't about self-righteousness or moral grandstanding. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and our responsibility to care for one another. It's about cultivating a spirit of compassion and empathy, even in the face of adversity. This act of service is not a passive endeavor. It is a form of resistance, a refusal to succumb to the forces that seek to dehumanize us. It is the assertion that our lives have meaning beyond the accumulation of wealth and power. It is about finding joy in giving, in contributing to the well-being of others, and in making the world a better place. Living a life of blessing requires courage and resilience. It demands that we challenge the status quo, speak truth to power, and stand in solidarity with the marginalized and oppressed. It's about recognizing that we have the opportunity to be of service to others, not out of self-interest but out of love and compassion. This spirit of service is not confined to grand gestures. It is woven into the fabric of our daily lives, in the small acts of kindness and compassion that we extend to others. It is about choosing to live a life of purpose, a life that is guided by our values, and a life that is dedicated to making a positive impact on the world. In response to a question about economic justice, West references Martin Luther King Jr. and the need to put the poor and working people at the center of our concern. He advocates for prophetic imagination to bring economic justice in the unjust world, challenging the influence of corporate elites and advocating for the defense of workers' rights, unions, and public education against profit-driven privatization and closures. This vision of economic justice is not about charity or handouts, but about dismantling the systemic inequalities that perpetuate poverty and create vast disparities in wealth and opportunity. It's about creating an economy that serves the needs of all people, not just the privileged few. This economic transformation requires a fundamental shift in our values, a recognition that human well-being is more important than profit maximization. It demands that we create a more just and equitable economic system, one that prioritizes the needs of the poor and working people. It's about building a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, where everyone has access to the basic necessities of life. This involves challenging the power of corporations, advocating for policies that promote economic equality, and building a more democratic and participatory economy. It's about creating a society where wealth is distributed more equitably, where workers have a greater say in the decisions that affect their lives, and where the environment is protected for future generations. It also means challenging the dominant narratives that justify economic inequality. We must expose the myths that perpetuate the belief that wealth and power are earned through merit alone, that the poor are responsible for their own misfortune. We must create a culture that values compassion and solidarity, that recognizes our shared responsibility to create a more just and equitable world. It's about building a movement that is rooted in love, justice, and compassion. A movement that is capable of transforming both individuals and societies. West discusses the Occupy movement as a sign of hope for new social movements. recognizing its diverse voices and its potential to challenge the status quo. However, he also acknowledges the challenges of fear and fragmentation that still present barriers to uniting social movements. Overcoming these barriers requires building trust, fostering solidarity, and creating a shared vision of a more just and equitable future. It requires recognizing that we are all interconnected and that our struggles are intertwined. Building a united front requires overcoming these divisions, fostering solidarity, and creating spaces for dialogue and collaboration. It demands a commitment to shared goals and a willingness to transcend individual differences. It's about recognizing that our strength lies in our unity, that we are stronger together than we are apart. This involves building bridges across racial, ethnic, and class lines, recognizing that our struggles are interconnected, and that we must work together to create a more just and equitable world for all. It also means challenging the forces that seek to divide us, the forces that perpetuate fear and hatred, the forces that seek to maintain the status quo. We must resist the temptations to demonize those who are different from us, to scapegoat marginalized communities, and to succumb to the politics of division. We must embrace our diversity, recognizing that our differences are a source of strength, and that we are all part of the same human family. West sees reformist steps like social impact investing as significant, highlighting the importance of moral and spiritual dimensions in institutions. However, he also emphasizes the importance of structural change beyond philanthropy, recognizing that true economic justice requires a fundamental transformation of the systems that govern our economy. This involves challenging the power of corporations, advocating for policies that promote economic equality, and building a more democratic and participatory economy. While socially responsible investment can play a role in promoting positive change, it's not a substitute for systemic reforms. We need to challenge the underlying power structures that perpetuate inequality and create a more just and equitable economic system. It's about recognizing that the market is not a neutral force, but a system of power that can be used to either liberate or oppress. This economic transformation requires a fundamental shift in our values, a recognition that human well-being is more important than profit maximization. It demands that we create a more just and equitable economic system, one that prioritizes the needs of the poor and working people. It's about building a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, where everyone has access to the basic necessities of life. Cornel West's message is a powerful call to action, urging us to embrace love, justice, and the prophetic fire that burns within us. It's a call to resist the temptations of the market-driven world, to cultivate militant tenderness in the face of injustice, and to dedicate ourselves to the long and arduous struggle for a more just and equitable world. It is a reminder that the pursuit of economic justice is not just a political or economic issue. It is a moral and spiritual imperative. It requires a fundamental shift in our values, a recognition of our shared humanity, and a commitment to building a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. This is not an easy path. It requires courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment to our values, but it's the only path that leads to a more just and equitable world. It's about recognizing that in a world that sells out, we must buy in to love, justice, and humanity. West's legacy is a call to resist, to love, and to build a world that reflects the best of our humanity. It is a legacy of resistance, a legacy of hope, and a legacy of love.